I'm coming to you from Charleston, West Virginia. I'm in a hotel room, so I have a filter on right now, so it blurs the background. It's kind of interesting. I was playing around with it. It's like you kind of do this, and your hand just disappears. It's like form and emptiness right here. Yeah, I'm traveling. I'm seeing family, and then I'm heading up to Toledo, Ohio, to a Dharma center there to help celebrate a rite of passage for one of the teachers up there. So I'll be heading there tomorrow. And Peg mentioned, my time in Asheville at Windhorse Zen Community, and I'm sure many of you have seen the news about Asheville and how devastated it is. Many of my good friends and fellow Dharma practitioners there are without power, without water still, still uncertain of when that is going to change. So hearts go out to all of them. So, thank you for inviting me, Valerie, to give this Dharma talk tonight. So tonight, I'd like to talk about a koan, right? Surprise, surprise. But this is not a koan that you're going to find in any of the traditional collections per se. But it's one we all carry, with us every day. And the koan I'm referring to is the koan of aging. A few weeks ago, I was invited to give a talk at a conference on aging, and it was just so wonderful to speak with this group of seniors, maybe 50 or so seniors in the room. And, it was so refreshing because nobody was checking their phones. Maybe because they didn't know how, I don't know. No one was fidgeting. And they were just fully present. And so it was just a real joy to spend some time with that group. And another reason why I wanted to speak on this topic tonight is it's quite personal. Just this week, my family has been working to move my dad into assisted living after a couple of hospital stays, and so it's time. It's a big change for him and for everybody. And so, through that process, it's made me reflect more on aging, not just for him, but for all of us. And then the third reason is something that comes out of my teaching with my students, and especially some of my older students. And this question seems to arise quite often with practitioners who come to practice, say, a little bit older in their life. And the question is some version of, am I too old, to really practice effectively? Do I have what it takes at this stage of life to realize my true nature? And I think it's an important question, that we all should take up. And so for all those reasons, I thought it was a good koan to center on tonight. So as everybody probably knows, impermanence is central to Buddhism. It's at the heart of how we understand the self and the world. And as practitioners, I think we're tasked with studying impermanence, observing how it shows up in our lives, at the most fundamental level, of course. So I think somebody once said, it's not that things change, it's that there is nothing but change. Even the mountains are constantly changing. the night sky that we look out on, perhaps on a cloudless night, is not the same sky that our ancestors looked out on. But I think for most of us, the form or the way that impermanence that shows up for us most, the way we feel it most, is through our own experience, of aging. I do want to say, though, first, before going on a little further, that for those people, if you're new to practice or to Buddhism, it's topics like this. I want to acknowledge that topics like this, old age and sickness and death, can make Buddhism, seem pessimistic at times. There's because, of course, it's a topic that many people avoid thinking about, certainly speaking about openly. But from a Buddhist perspective, ignoring these truths is not just unrealistic, it's actually seen as quite harmful. So aging and illness continue whether we acknowledge them or not. So denial only deepens our suffering. So we're tasked with turning towards these realities so that we can meet them with clarity. And so in that spirit, I want to share a passage from one of the early teachings of the Buddha. It's from a sutra called the Three Divine Messengers, which is in this, the three divine messengers, which of course is sickness, old age, and death, right? And in this sutra, the Buddha tells the story of someone who, as a result of sort of bad conduct in his life, finds himself in front of Yama Raja, this mythical lord of death that is must have come out of some Hindu or Vedic kind of mythology, but is often seen in Buddhism as well. So here is the passage. In consequence, with the breakup of the body after death, he is reborn in the plane of misery, in a bad destination in the lower world, in hell. There the wardens of hell grab him by both arms and show him to the king Yama, saying, "This person, your majesty, did not behave properly towards his mother and father. He did not behave properly towards ascetics and Brahmins, and he did not honor the elders of his family. May your majesty inflict due punishment on him." Then King Yama questions and interrogates and cross-examines him about the first divine messenger, saying, "Good man, didn't you see the first divine messenger that appeared among human beings?" And he replies, "No, Lord, I didn't see him." Then the king Yama says to him, "But good man, didn't you ever see among human beings a man or a woman, 80, 90, or 100 years of age, frail, bent like a roof bracket, crooked, wobbling as they go along, leaning on a stick, ailing, youth gone, with teeth broken, with gray or scanty hair, or bald, with wrinkled skin and blotched limbs?" And the man replies, "Yes, Lord, I have seen this." Then King Yama says to him, "Good man, didn't it occur to you, an intelligent and mature person, I too am subject to old age. I am not exempt from old age. Let me now do good by body, speech, and mind." "No, Lord, I could not. I was heedless." Then King Yama said, "Through heedlessness, good man, you failed to do good by body, speech, and mind. Surely they will treat you in a way that fits your heedlessness. That bad karma of yours was not done by your mother or father, nor by your brother or sister, nor by friends and companions, nor by relatives and family members, nor by deities or ascetics or Brahmins. Rather, you were the one who did the bad karma, and you yourself have to experience its result. Clearly, these words of the Buddha are for all of us. Have we seen that first divine messenger? And if so, have we not thought, I too am subject to old age? And as a result, right, have we not thought, have we not been inspired by that? May I live with clarity, using this life for the benefit of others, fully living. So what is our relationship with aging? Unfortunately, as I said, for most people, it's not something that's thought about. I was speaking with my own dad, and he said, when he was 80 years old, he said, up to this point, I had never thought of my age. I just took it for granted that I would always heal. Right? So, surely it's something that's celebrated in certain ways. We celebrate birthdays and anniversaries and other rites of passage. But, beneath the surface, it's aging is dreaded. It stirs up fear. And so culturally, I think we've become so obsessed with, staying young. Through cosmetic procedures, all the kind of youth-centered fashion that is present, and sayings like 60 is the new 40 or 70 is the new whatever, these sayings that we hear, all these things that we deny, even on technology. And even Zoom, I was playing around again trying to get this background to disappear, and all that very interesting filters that you can do. You can look really good on Zoom. All those wrinkles can really just disappear, right? So, but no matter what we do, it's unavoidable. It's happening right now. From the moment something is born, it begins moving towards its end. I came across a passage by a well-known Tibetan teacher, Dilgo Kshente Rinpoche, who said, the birth of a baby is considered the most joyful of events, and yet nothing can halt that child's relentless course towards death. I don't recommend putting that on a congratulation card to a new parent, but it is a truth that needs to be heard, and it's a pretty wild truth. Just the other morning, I was reading about, it was a science article about a roundworm that was found in the permafrost in Siberia, many feet down in the permafrost, and it was frozen 46,000 years ago. And as they took it back to the lab, they warmed it up, and it came out of cryostasis, waking up, and immediately started reproducing. And then shortly after, died. It's wild. So we could ask, when do we get old? Right? At what point? I remember as a kid thinking, that certain people were so old, right? And it turns out that they were maybe 30 years old, 40 years old, And the other day I was in the grocery store, and this sweet older woman called me young man. Right? It reminds me of a passage again from the Buddha when he was standing in a doorway of some kind, and he said, am I coming or am I going? coming or am I going? Right? Where is that demarcation? Right? For you, all of you in the Zendo, right, you could say, are you in the process of coming to the Zendo or in the process of leaving the Zendo right now? Now, with my students, I encourage them, of course, to extend their notions of what practice is, to, of course, see that it's always happening. Right? We can think of it as certainly something we do when we sit down and cross our legs and focus on our breathing or on our koan or present moment awareness. But what about, those moments before we sit down or after we get back up? What about when we get into our cars to drive to the Zendo or drive home? Right? So we're learning, of course, to see practice not as something static, but really as something less demarcated. And in doing so, I think we're really seeing our lives that way. Right? Conversely, if we stand back and we label things old, young, right? Which means going to our thoughts about things, then we're separate. This is the place of the judging mind, the sort of cognizing mind that sees everything as this or that. Everything is measured. And it's that measuring mind that I believe really breeds so much of our fear. So that's why when we're at the bedside of somebody that's ill or dying, right, that we have so much fear come up because we're thinking of our own death, our own sickness, our own mortality. I think that's why it's so important to step towards that, just as a practice, to step towards our whatever it is that we fear, to walk towards, because fear always grows in thought, in the darkness of thought, right? In those dark assumptions, those unexamined thoughts. So practice is really shining a light on it. And that's why at the end of sesshin, at the end of each evening in sesshin, we recite a verse. In our Zendo, it's even as night darkens the green earth, the wheel turns, death follows birth. Strive as you sleep with every breath that you may wake past day, past death. I know in some versions they say, let me respectfully remind you, life and death are of great importance. And then the verse ends with something like, do not squander your life. It's so easy to forget, to get lost, to believe, of course, as we're young, that it's just going to go on forever. Or, when we're older, to get lost in our ideas that we have very little time left, right? In Zen, we are very wary of getting lost in concepts. One of my favorite phrases from Master Matsu, he was once asked, what is the meaning of Buddhism or the Dharma? And Matsu replied, what is the meaning of this moment? You so get lost in those ideas of meaning. And so if we're spending our time thinking about our limitations, of course they will become a self-fulfilling prophecy. how we'll never be able to do this or how we can't do that. Actually, we might say instead of a self-fulfilling prophecy, we might say a full of self prophecy. At the same time, if we haven't thought about our age, it can blindside us. So we start as soon as we can. People often get concerned, as I said in the beginning, about their age, saying that they're too old to practice in earnest. And in one sense, you could say you should be concerned about that. You should. But we also are, again, cautious. What does that mean? I'm too old. So this came up, by the way, very strongly in our group. We have a Tuesday night discussion group after Zazen, and we're reading a very well-known book in Zen circles. It's called From Novice to Master. I think the subtitle is something like Ongoing Lessons in the Extent of My Own Stupidity. This book by Soko Morinaga, who was a Rinzai, contemporary Rinzai master. And in one of the chapters, he talks about the rigors of the daily monastic schedule. And, as we were reading that, many in our group were just lamenting, how could I possibly practice like that? Waking up at 3:30 in the morning, practicing until midnight. It's so severe. So, but that kind of training, just so people know, when we read those things, we want to remember that that kind of training is designed for young people. Most of the people that are in a monastery are in their early 20s. And there's a kind of value in that rigorous kind of practice at times, but it's not the only way to practice. In our country, in our traditions, both the mountain cloud, in the tradition that I practice in, we have these very dynamic forms of lay practice that are really geared towards the realities of lay life, of our aging bodies. And part of which is about, when we're young, we lack life experience. And so what we bring to the table, I think, as older people, is all of these life lessons that we've learned about how to do things, how to work, smarter, not harder. And this we can bring to our practice. I just remember visiting older relatives, my grandparents, going out into my grandfather's workshop and seeing all these clever ways that these workarounds that he did because he had lost a lot of his strength, Same with my grandmother, just these brilliant ways of remembering things and writing things in certain places and these sort of workarounds. So, we may not be able to sit all day like they do in a Japanese monastery, but, our life experience is what we can bring. And it's not just about aging. People often have these ideas that they can't practice, they can't see into their true nature because they're too busy, or because their kids need so much time, or because they have physical limitations, they have pain and all of that. But being with our practice, embodying this way, doesn't necessarily mean that we have to assume long periods of informal zazen, right? This is what is so beautiful about our practice, is that we don't need anything but what we have in front of us. By just returning over and over again to this mind of presence. So we have this thought, I can't do it. So we return. We return, not to another thought. We don't replace it with a thought, but with this experience of now, of Mu. I was listening to a teacher named Jeff Shore, a Rinzai teacher, a lay teacher who lives, I think he's in Kyoto, but he often comes, he's an American living in Kyoto, but I think he comes to the States quite often. And he said, that as we age, we begin to lose our sight or our hearing or our agility or strength. And we suffer mainly because we're stuck in the idea that we should be like a 25-year-old. We get angry at our own bodies because of our ideas about how we think they should be. And then he said something very intriguing. He said, as we lose these abilities, he said, if we haven't seen what we need to see, or if we haven't heard what we need to hear by the time we're 60, then there's a problem, right? In other words, nature knows what it's doing as it's coiling back these abilities. We don't need the senses of a 25-year-old or a 30-year-old or a 40-year-old. Because, to my mind, those physical changes are invitations, actually, to turn inwards, which is about questioning. Who is it, right? Who is it that's aging? There we go. There's our question. Right? Our koan. What is this true nature? Of course, you could say it's ageless, without age. So we want to be careful about this getting lost in thought. Dogen famously said, you should cease from intellectual or practice based on intellectual understanding, pursuing speech and words, and take the backward step, turning the light around to illuminate the self. He's inviting us to turn inward, beyond words, beyond concepts, and experience this timeless one. In a similar vein, Master Yunmen said, the whole world is medicine, right? This thing that we want to turn away from, this so-called thing. But our aging is the medicine. It's not our ideas about it, but it's an invitation into what's happening now. When we feel our age, our aches, our pains, when we can't do what we used to do, we're invited to meet it. Shido Bunan, a Japanese Rinzai master, famously said, those who seek the Dharma in the depths are those who leave it behind in the shallows. Again, about leaving our ideas of old and young behind. But it's also, I think this can be thought of as again, an invitation to use the wisdom of age to practice more deeply. So I want to encourage all of us with older bodies, it's about, we have sewn up so many of the aspirations of youth, and now we can focus on practice. Age brings, like I said, brings experience. We've learned how not to waste time. We have learned, hopefully, ideally, we have learned to let go of people pleasing, right? We know how to work. We know how to focus. We don't need to see practice as being, in terms of success or failure. We don't have to be concerned with making a name for ourselves. And in that way, in all these ways, we can just loosen, totally unknot. And our older bodies, I believe, are a gift in many ways because they show us this greater path of acceptance, right? We want to sit on the floor and cross our legs in the lotus position or, something close to it, and our bodies refuse, you know. And so older bodies means having to accept help. And for many people, this is a hard one, to accept help. Right? One of the bodhisattva ideals or paramitas is, which means perfections or practices, is dana, which is the virtue of giving or generosity. And we often view giving as something that we do, that we give. But to my mind, generosity is this dana, practice of dana, is also allowing generosity, to flow towards us, right? Giving somebody else an opportunity, creating space for others to give to us. And so in that, we're letting go of this self-sufficiency, right? I've got to do it by myself. And instead opening up more to interdependence. This truth of interdependence. As we age, we also have less real world obligations. And hopefully we don't just fill it back up, fill it more in, got to keep doing more and more. In traditional Hindu culture, I work a lot with Indian families doing therapy. And so I've learned quite a bit about Indian culture. And there is this concept or this practice in Hinduism of the 4 stages of life called the ashramas. This first stage, which is the student stage for young people, which is focused on learning and growing and laying the foundations of life. And then the second stage is the sort of the householder stage, where we are focused on societal obligations, making a living, raising kids perhaps. But as we get older, this third stage is about withdrawing more from the sort of worldly duties and then turning inward to focus more on spiritual practice. Oftentimes at this stage, couples support each other. If we're in a couple, we support each other in our spiritual practice. That takes the forefront now. And then in this last stage, individuals and couples, sometimes they even separate to fully immerse themselves into practice, letting go of all those ties to the world. And so when I was thinking about that, I was thinking that, that this could be a helpful reframe, for practice in this country, for American Zen, instead of seeing aging as a barrier, instead seeing it as turning from the external to the so-called internal. Of course, fundamentally, they're not two. But, spiritual maturity in Zen is a big deal. We have so many beautiful examples of it. Master Joshu, of course, comes to mind, who didn't begin even teaching until he was 80 years old, we're told. And then I think of Master Toksan, who came to practice as this brash young man, full of himself, full of ideas, even after having a Kensho experience, still sort of as he should be, right? Full of life, full of himself in many ways, even had seen through the self. And in the koan tradition that we have in our shared lineage here, we meet Tokusan at various points in his life in the koans, and we see him aging, we see his maturity. And in one of these beautiful cases, we meet him as an old teacher, right? Kind of shuffles down to lunch one day, holding his eating bowls, his meal bowls. And this younger head cook says to him, in sort of a condescending way, teacher, I haven't struck the lunch bell. What are you doing here? So pretty much wondering, as old Tokusan lost it, or is he really a master? Is he really all that? But Tokusan just quietly turns and returns to his room. Right? It's so beautiful in that simplicity. In Zen, we talk about the hazy moon of enlightenment. It's not about the moon being obscured, but it isn't that bright, crisp moon that's present on a cloudless night. It really refers to this maturation in practice that brings with it this kind of worn quality, this wabi-sabi. And sometimes Zen is talked about as being a mountain path, going up the mountain, climb above the clouds, and eventually reaching the peak and seeing the moon bright and clear. But then we continue down the other side of the mountain, heading home, now with dusty clothes and worn out shoes. And this is the 10th ox herding picture of returning to the marketplace to help, having been through so much in practice and in life, that we're able to help more effectively. It's also the 5th stage of Dongshan, who outlined the practice journey using these sort of 5 stages. In this last stage, the poem says, let's pull it up here. He says, who would presume to join their voice with someone who has surpassed there is and there is not? Everyone longs to leave the mundane stream, yet finally you return to sit in the charcoal heap. Surpassing both there is and there is not means that we're not caught in anything, just free. This charcoal heap is, of course, what's left over after that bright fire has died down and cooled. And so in the stage, it's often said that the practitioner is indistinguishable, no longer standing out as someone who needs to shine brightly. When I was a boy, I used to do coin collecting. It was one of my hobbies, and I remember getting the idea that I should polish my coins. And so I went down to the sink under the cabinet in the kitchen and grabbed my mom's silver polish and took out some of my silver coins and began polishing them, because I was going to take them down to the coin shop. Back in the days when you actually had a local coin shop. And I was going to sell these. And I remember walking in very proudly with these And the shop owner spotted them right away. And he said, "You've polished those, haven't you?" He said, and he admonished me, he said, "Don't ever polish a coin because it leaves scratches on them and it's artificial." And then he took out this beautiful silver dollar that had patina, this beautiful patina, sort of a rainbow hue. Actually, I brought it with me. I still have it because I bought it. You can't see it probably on Zoom, but I've had this for 45 years. Still has that hue. You know, in Zen, we value patina. It's that wisdom that comes with age and experience. It comes from being in so many pockets and pocketbooks. You know, in many ways, the youth, the crispness, the polish of youth is beautiful. You know, we're filled with aspiration, you know, and accomplishment and all of those good things. And yet that also has to be let go of. So what's valued, I believe, in Zen is actually the ability not to shine, just to disappear fully, gone. Of course, which is our true nature from the beginning. But really, it's about realizing also that this life as it is, no matter where we are, what our bodies are, that this life is enough as it is. So thank you for listening, and I'm happy to take questions, but I know we're kind of short on time as well. So however people want to do that, you tell me, Peg or Valerie or whoever's in charge.
Yeah, if you're online, if you can use the raise a hand signal, I think you should be able to unmute yourself. And for those in the Zendo, just raise a hand and I will bring the microphone to you.
Oh, thank you so much, Teshin. It just came on to be able to unmute, and what a beautiful, generous talk for all of us. I see there is a question, so I'll leave the space. But I just, you know, what you're saying in this koan of aging, but also just your presence. Really very beautiful gift of patina. Thank you. Thank you.
Zach, I think you have your hands up.
Thank you for your talk, Teisho. It's good to see you. I wanted to, it's hard to lose a parent. So I just wanted to thank you for your talk, but encourage you to now put away the cognizing, put away the books, put away the words, and really feel that memory of the patina of the coin. Go be with your father and feel his aging and feel the grief and sadness under your fear. Because this is the time you get to do that. It's the time you get to put all the words all the learning you've done and just put it into practice. So I hope we can hold that space for you, so you can feel that and grieve and be with your father.
Yeah. Well, you know, he is still full of life, luckily. You know, he's going to go not very quietly into this good night. So
I understand. I guess there's just a difference between when we're trying to put all the Dharma together in the words that it speaks versus allowing ourselves to feel like you did when you thought of the coin, to really get past the koans, get past the words, to
Yeah, well,
really
that's
get
our
in touch
practice,
with
right?
our
That's
complete
our,
being
yeah,
and
thanks.
sadness and all of it, all of
Yeah.
it, not just the
Yeah,
stillness, but the all of it.
yeah, yeah. How could it be otherwise? Thank you. Anybody have anything else?
Thank you again, Teshin, and yeah, knowing you well, which has been a gift of our shared path. I am confident. Confident. Yeah. Thanks again.